Welcome to Context Bites. Here you'll find lots of ideas that you can use for your AO3 links for English literature.
Welcome back to a new year and a new video. When analysing any play, it's important to look at both the language and the structure, as it's important to show the examiners your understanding of the play as a whole. Which is why in today's video, we'll be taking a look at aspects of structure in Romeo and Juliet. As you know, the play is divided into comedy and tragedy. Acts 1 and 2 being comedy, Acts 3, 4 and 5 considered tragedy. Remember, it's Mercutio's death in Act 3, which is the turning point, or the peripeteia, that switches the play from a comedy to a tragedy. But is there more to the structure than this? Have you ever noticed how some of the scenes seem to mirror each other in some way? Pause the video now to have a think about which scenes these might be. Perhaps the most obvious scenes are the ones with the prince. We first see him in Act 1 when he breaks up the fight between the Capulet and Montague's servants. In Act 3, he has to deal with the fallout of Mercutio and Tybalt's deaths, and banishes Romeo as a result. Finally, he berates the Montagues and Capulets when the death of our two lovers at the end of Act 5 is discovered. Each time we see him, he has to deal with the consequences of the feud. And each time, the consequences seem to get progressively worse. By creating these parallels, perhaps Shakespeare is trying to emphasize the shift from comedy to tragedy. A second example of mirroring can be seen between Lord Capulet and Paris. In Act 1, we see Lord Capulet discuss the idea of marriage with Paris, and in this scene, Lord Capulet seems very relaxed, calm, and even patient. He even seems concerned about Juliet's welfare, stating that my child is yet a stranger in the world. This conversation is then mirrored in Act 3, when once again he discusses the idea of marriage. However, in this second conversation, he's much more urgent in his actions and his words, stating, "O Thursday, let it be, O Thursday, tell her she shall be married to this noble earl." And it is this sense of urgency that Shakespeare uses to emphasize the shift from comedy to tragedy. See if you can find the parallels to the following scenes, and let me know your thoughts in the comments.
So why does Shakespeare use the technique of mirroring? Well, it helps us to see the play as a whole, rather than looking at scenes as individual entities, and this therefore helps us to see how themes, characters, and ideas develop across the play, as well as emphasizing how the play shifts from a comedy to a tragedy.
Let's take a look at a second structural feature that Shakespeare uses. The play follows a classic Aristotelian tragedy, whereby you have a beginning, where characters or setting are introduced, then the action or the unfolding events take place, reaching the climax of the play, where you perhaps have a change of reversal or fortune or the downfall of the hero, leading to the falling action, where you perhaps have a cathartic release, and finally the end, where a new order is established. And each act within the play is representative of these stages. And these types of tragedies were particularly popular amongst Elizabethans, as they allowed the audiences to explore a range of emotions, moral dilemmas, as well as learn moral messages. Shakespeare also borrows elements from Senecan tragedies. Named after the Roman philosopher Lucius Annaeus Seneca, these tragedies often depicted violence on stage. In comparison, violence in Greek tragedies was shown off stage in order to focus more on the emotional impact of events. But Shakespeare didn't shy away from showing blood, gore, and violence. Knowing his audience well, he was appealing to their bloodthirsty nature. And when looking at the more violent scenes in Romeo and Juliet, for example, the conflict in the opening act, Tybalt stabbing Mercutio, Romeo killing Tybalt, Romeo fighting Paris outside the tomb, Juliet stabbing herself, and Romeo drinking the poison, you can imagine these scenes being acted out on stage, much to the delight of the audience.
So the next time you're answering a question about Romeo and Juliet, try and include some knowledge about structure as well as language. Don't forget to comment on why Shakespeare may have chosen those particular structural features. This will help show the examiner your knowledge of the play as a whole.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave your ideas in the comment section down below. Don't forget to check out the next video in our series.